Russia thought the river was safe, because at 14:30 local time, a Russian oil supply boat cruised forward like it was on a Sunday fishing trip. No air cover, no warning shots, no idea it was already trending on a Ukrainian drone feed. This wasn't a battle. This was a lesson, and it starts with one uncomfortable truth for Moscow. Modern wars don't begin with explosions anymore. They begin with Wi-Fi. The moment that Russian boat pushed into contested water, it wasn't entering a river. It was stepping into a kill box with a data plan. Ukrainian drone teams were already watching, already tracking, already calculating fuel burn, wind drift, and escape angles like fantasy football stats. And here's the first shocker. This interception didn't rely on brute force, it relied on patience. Ukrainian operators didn't rush the strike. They let the boat move, let it commit, let it drift just far enough away from friendly cover that turning back would take longer than moving forward. It's like letting someone walk halfway onto a frozen lake, then reminding them physics exists. Now here's where things get spicy. The Russian crew wasn't careless. They were following doctrine, hugging narrow channels, keeping a low profile, moving fast. On paper, they did everything right. But doctrine doesn't update as fast as Ukrainian firmware, because while the boat hugged the water, Ukrainian FPV drones weren't flying at it. They were flying around it, high, low, wide arcs. This wasn't one drone, it was a conversation in the sky. And here's where things get messy. Ukraine doesn't hunt boats with drones anymore. They herd them. The drones boxed the vessel into a section of river where turning around meant exposing the engine. And in river warfare, your engine is basically your resume. And just as the Russian crew realized something felt off. But that uneasy feeling, that wasn't panic yet. Panic comes when you realize you're not alone, and neither is the enemy. Because while the boat crew scanned the riverbanks, Ukrainian drone operators were already fighting a second battle, one the Russians never saw. Electronic warfare. Russia fired back, not with bullets, but with interference. Signal jamming spiked, frequencies clogged, control links started to fuzz. This interception almost failed, for about 8 seconds. That's how long it took Ukraine's mesh network to reroute control through alternate nodes. The drones didn't drop, they didn't drift, they didn't even wobble. The operators barely blinked. Imagine cutting the strings on a marionette and watching it keep dancing. That's the terrifying part for Russia. Ukraine isn't improvising anymore, it's systematized chaos. Now the drones closed in, not rushing, not screaming toward the target, but hovering just far enough away to stay annoying, unsettling, psychological. The Russian boats sped up. Bad move, because speed burns fuel, fuel limits options, and river combat doesn't reward panic, it punishes it. And this is where the trap snaps shut, because speed didn't save the boat, it made it predictable. Ukrainian drone teams don't chase, they wait for mistakes. The faster the boat moved, the more it exposed thermal signatures, engine heat, exhaust bloom, friction against the water. On Ukrainian screens, the target didn't just glow, it screamed. That's when the FPV drone dropped altitude, low enough that the river spray blurred the camera, fast enough that the operator had seconds, not minutes. This wasn't cinematic slow motion, this was muscle memory. The drone lined up not for the hull, but for the weakest point every small boat has, the engine mount at the waterline. Because you don't need to sink a boat, you just need to stop it. Impact. The explosion didn't look dramatic at first. No Hollywood fireball, just a sharp crack and sudden silence. The engine died. Momentum carried the boat forward, straight into reeds, mud, and nowhere. But if you think this story ends with one drone and one boat, you're about to underestimate Ukraine. Again. Because the first strike wasn't the kill. It was the signal. Secondary drones arrived within seconds, not launched impulsively, but already airborne, already cued, already waiting their turn like planes stacked over an airport. Ukraine plans interceptions like air traffic control. Each drone had a job. One watched for survivors, one scanned for Russian counter-drones, one hovered just out of sight, insurance. And here's the brutal irony. The Russian boat still had weapons, still had crew, still had radios. But none of that matters when the sky belongs to someone else, because dominance isn't about firepower anymore. It's about awareness. And at that moment, Ukraine knew everything. Where the crew moved, where they hid, where they froze. The river had gone quiet. Too quiet. And when a battlefield goes silent, it usually means someone else is about to speak. Very loudly.